there's something you said earlier, which I think is very important to kind of put on the table again, which is often the story is about something. It doesn't need to be overly dramatic or explosive or amazing. And I'd like to share one more little story before we wind up. It's a very, very subtle, but very, very impacting. So here we go. It's based on a true story, but I'm not quite sure on the details. So it's a little bit, the essential part will come across. And that is that a family had to escape their home country because of a sudden war. And they didn't have time to pack much. It was one of those grab things and get out the door and get on a boat and heading to safer lands. And the story is told from the eyes of the little girl who only had time to grab like a dress and her teddy bear. Teddy. The name of the teddy bear, appropriately enough, was Teddy.
Teddy.
So that's okay. So she's got teddy bear, and it's like a little source of comfort. But they had some choppy seas. They had some rough seas, and unfortunately, she dropped Teddy, and Teddy slid along the deck and fell into the ocean. And the little girl was devastated because the one thing she had taken, she didn't have anymore. She'd already lost so much. Now, a couple of days later, an officer from the ship came to the cabin and said, "I have a letter for Joanna." And everybody's stopping and looking, and she got this letter, and she opens up the letter, and it's from Teddy. And Teddy's saying, "Hello, Joanna. I just want to let you know that I was picked up by another boat, and they're taking care of me. I'm with another little girl. She's not as nice as you, but I'm safe and dry. Don't worry. And I hope everybody's well."
Wow.
Something like this. And she went running to her brother, who's like 2 years older, and she's reading the story over and over, and she's imagining what's happening with Teddy now, and she's asking him questions. What do you think? What do you think's going on now with Teddy? And she's back. And a few days later, another letter, and Teddy started to tell her his adventures in his new life. So they arrive, and the family arrives to shore, and they start building a new life. And for 2 or 3 years, these letters would come quite regularly from Teddy. Until one day they stopped. And she went to her older brother and said, "What, you think Teddy's all right? I don't get any more letters. You think he's all right? I'm worried about him." And the older brother said, "Why do you still do this, Joanna? You've worked out by now that it's me sending those letters."
Wow.
And Joanna said, "I know, but I didn't want it to stop." And the thing in that story is so moving is,
yes,
it didn't cost much. Kindness doesn't cost much normally. It just needs a little bit of thinking, a little bit of concerning for another, a little bit of effort, and you can cause something that for the rest of her life she will be.
Yes.
It's a treasure in her life for the rest of her life, and it didn't cost much. A bit of paper and a pen, a little bit of thinking, a little bit of consideration, and we can create amazing stories. With a little bit of creativity, a little bit of wanting other people's lives to be feeling a bit better.
Yes.
So,
yes, a beautiful story, many aspects to it. One of it that hope can be maintained, although our realistic side says the bear is already somewhere on the bottom of the ocean, and it goes into what we call imagination, because I think about her, she liked to get the letters, and she doesn't mind that her brother writes it, because something passing through the letter, certain essences.
yes.
Now, for 6 years, every night when my children went to sleep, I had to tell them a story. I had to. They were in the same bed. I had to tell them a story, then each one moved to her on his bed and went to sleep. And sometimes I told stories from my life and my childhood, and sometimes I was reading to them stories. But then I realized that I can't do it anymore. And one day I said, this is the last story. It was actually Dr. Dolittle, Adventures in Hebrew. So I'm telling the story, and each time we're getting closer and closer, and say, that's it tonight, children, is the last time that you hear a story. From tomorrow, you know already how to read. You will read by yourself the stories. They didn't like it, but they had to accept it. Few weeks later, one of them came to me and told me, you know, from the day that you stop telling us stories, we fall asleep differently. Before, it was like magic, falling asleep safely. Now we have to work how to fall asleep. So many things can pass, including the magic, including the safety, including the cover, and what we call imagination, that on its wings is carrying so many things that are vital for our soul and other parts. It's all in those stories.
Yeah.